First of all, and on behalf of the Finnish-African Society, I want to thank you, Ayesha, for taking time out of your busy schedule to have a chat with me. Um, this interview is part of the Finnish-African Literature Art Project. This is an initiative of the Finnish-African Society, whose intention is to create awareness and promote African literary works from the African continent to the Helsinki residents and beyond. When it comes to Ghanaian literature written by female writers, the first images that I have are Efwa Sutherland, Mabel Dodakwa, Ama Dark, of course, and Ama Taidu. And then I picture a young and creative generation of female writers with a broad mindedness, such as Yagyasi Teisalasi and Ayesha Harruna Attah. So I'm not just honored, but I'm also privileged, a privileged person, to share 25 minutes with you. You are 37 years old, and if I'm not mistaken, and you had published 5 novels so far and some short stories. So what is the secret, Ayesha? How do you do it? You're just 37 years old.
Thanks, Fede. I'm really honored for you to have chosen me for this interview as well. So thank you. What is the secret? Oh my goodness. I think it's just waking up with a passion and following it no matter what. I started this when I was 23, 24, and I had moved back from from the US to Ghana, and I didn't know what I was going to do, but I took a leap of faith. And when I heard about a residency in Senegal run by Yikwe Ama, I said, this is it. This is what I want to do with the rest of my life. So I took that leap of faith. I didn't know whether I was going to succeed or be good at it. And once I started, the road has been bumpy. It hasn't always been well paid. There have been scrapes where I hadn't done so well with some books, but the passion is still there. So I think that's what it is. Like, no matter how difficult it gets, because I love what I do, I just keep going. I keep going, and step by step, it's led me to one book after the other. So I think if there's a secret, it's just being doggedly invested in whatever you're doing, no matter what. And even if it doesn't work out, just taking time to, lick your wounds and rest, and then picking the pen up again or your computer again and starting from scratch. I think that's it.
And you succeeded. Yeah. And you succeeded. Yeah, we can tell. So in 2010, you published Harmattan Rain, which was shortlisted for the 2010 Commonwealth Writers' Prize, African region. 5 years later, you published in 2015 Saturday Shadows. Then The Hundred Wells of Salaga, okay, a novel that I love, is both published in the US and the UK, and translated into Dutch, French, German, and Italian. And just last year, 2020, okay, your successful novel, The Deep Blue Between, also translated in 4 languages, Dutch, German, a month ago, more or less, in Italian, and a few weeks ago in Brazilian Portuguese, and probably in Catalan, okay? Yes. So, yeah. So I really need to translate either one or the other. I have to, yeah. Yes. So, and this is not over. No. So we have a rom-com, or a romantic comedy novel, coming up in August. Zainab Takes New York. So you were born in Ghana. You studied in Columbia University and New York University. You currently live in Senegal. Most of your novels and short stories are set in Ghana, some in New York, or we have some Ghanaian characters living in New York, or as it happens with Victoria in The Deep Blue Between, who lived first in Nigeria and later in São Salvador de Bahia, Brazil. So there's a fascinating theme regarding your novels. You invite readers to travel not only to America or Africa, also through different historical periods. Something that I really love. So where do you get your information or your ideas for the novels?
I think I just immerse myself fully wherever I find myself. So the place I know the most intimately is Ghana. So that's where I started from. That's what my first book was about. It was literally 50 years of Ghana's history from independence to the late 1990s, because um, I was interested in finding out what makes us tick as people, where we went wrong, what the patterns were. So it made sense for me to start with what I knew and what I was comfortable with. And then at the time I wrote my second book, I had lived in New York, I'd lived in Senegal, and I found some similarities between life in Ghana and in Senegal. Being in New York gave me that remove to see these connections. And so with my second book, I thought, okay, let's expand a bit out of Ghana. So I wrote about a fictional West African country. So I think anyone from West Africa reading it would find themselves in that book. It could be Sierra Leone, it could be whatever country with varying degrees, but like each of the characters has a name, I think from a different part of West Africa, or maybe a different part of Ghana, and then there are characters with names that span different countries in West Africa. And then by the time I got to the Hundred Wells of Salaga, I wanted to expand wider. I wanted to write a big continental book, and that hasn't happened yet. But then I had this story of my ancestor who I learned was a slave. And I wanted to know more because it was not a slave as I'd been taught, a person being plucked from West African shores to the Americas or to Europe. It was internal slavery. So the writer in me, the very curious child who lives in me, wanted to know more. So that was a book that was anchored very much so in West Africa. And once I wrote that, it also created its own universe, because then there were all these characters, and obviously they went into the diaspora. And that's a journey that I also wanted to learn about, because I lived in Bahia for 2 months and again saw connections. So
Mm,
anytime I see connections, anytime questions come to mind, I think that's where I begin to prod and poke a little bit more. And I want to dig at it. I want to find out everything I can. And then the story just develops from that point. And so it varies, But I think I'm just trying to be as alive as I can in whatever place I find myself, and then to use that to inspire my work. So there's a Senegal book maybe coming down the line as well,
yeah,
because I've
I don't
lived
see
here now for
Senegal. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
for
yeah.
6 years. So
Okay,
yeah.
that's interesting. Yeah, because I mean, I read most of your books, but I don't see Senegal right now. Yeah, I don't see it. Yeah.
Yeah, there's one short story that came out for preteens in February, Scoop magazine, that's set in Senegal. My
Okay.
first
Okay.
stab at Senegal writing, and I think I have another short story that's forthcoming sometime later in the year that's also set in
Interesting.
Senegal.
Interesting.
Yeah.
My God. So it is also interesting how you address in the Deep Blue between the Candomblé in Salvador de Bahia, Brazil, and the Yoruba culture that crossed the Atlantic Ocean and still coexist in Brazil and Cuba. And so, but there are not many African writers dealing with this subject. What prompted you to write about this?
There's an eternal search in me for who we are as Africans, um, without outside intervention. And by that I mean without the influences of Christianity and Islam. Islam has been here for a really long time, so that's a harder one. Even Christianity on the eastern coast of Africa has been around for a long time. But I wanted to, when I say a long time, relatively long time, because before that there were thousands of years where these two major world religions weren't here, and we had our own belief systems, our own philosophies. And I was privileged to work with Ayikwe Ama, whose life work has been to do some of that research and learning hieroglyphics, Egyptian hieroglyphics, to translate documents into English, French, and a number of African languages. And in taking part in that project, some of these questions on this quest that I mentioned began to be answered, but it's unending. That I don't know if I'll ever have all the answers that I'm looking for. But when I find some of them, then I latch onto them. So in Brazil, I found this. I found that even though candomblé is very linked to Catholicism, some of these ancient African ways managed to seep through, and that pantheon of Yoruba, gods, that still exists over there. And in Nigeria, I think in some places, but a lot of it is now underground because of Christianity and Islam. And in Brazil, likewise, but they managed to find a way to make it public. Like you have Orisha statues in the middle of the big city, beautiful statues, and you don't find that in African countries. And growing up, all that was traditional African religion was made to seem demonic or, anti-modernism. So it was very ingrained in us as an edgy age to sort of reject anything that seemed very traditional. So now that I've done a little more work and research, for me it's just fascinating, and some of the belief systems are just so open. Like with candomblé, I found that it was really welcoming. No matter what you looked like, you could just go into a temple and worship with everybody. And I found that like some of the big world religions can be pretty hostile to outsiders. And I have examples for days, but I don't know. I think the as a colonized people, we have a lot of work to do, and maybe there'll be more writers coming up who tackle this better than I can. I'm just scratching the surface now. I'm just beginning, and I started with candomblé because it seemed the most accessible, but I'd like to learn more about Santeria and like voodoo and all of that without it being the scary thing that it's made to seem. I'm sure there's
this is something new for the African literature. I don't want to say shocked, but I was born in Argentina. I visited Brazil. So when I read the candomblé, I said, wow, this is a reality, and it's great. So I can picture through your descriptions, the setting. So I can picture the Brazilian society, back then. So you did a great job. Yeah.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
very, very good.
I think there's also another writer, Akweke Emezi. So they write from an Igbo point of view. So they're also doing that work of centering like
Amazing.
African writing. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I read that book. Yeah. So there are two important characters in the 100 Wells of Salagan, Amina and Werch. I don't know how you pronounce it. Werche. Okay, Werche. Yeah. Werche. So they are very different, but they have an interesting relationship, okay, between the two. So I finished reading, okay, the book, and probably a year later, I opened this one, okay, and when I was about to start reading chapter 2, I read the title, okay, and I was like, no, wait a second, this is about Hassana. So I grabbed this one and I confirmed what I thought. This is okay about Amina's, okay, an elder twin sister, and I believe I sent you a message regarding this. So can you tell us, please, the link between one and the other?
So once I finished the 100 Wells of Salaga, like I said, there was this universe of characters that I spent so much time with. It took about 6 years to write this book. So I'd spent so much time with them, and some of them, the chapter was closed, like people like Helmut. For some reason, he was done with the story. Adnan, all these characters, even though their stories were, condensed and you didn't get their full lifespans, I felt like I was done with them. But there are a couple of characters that just wanted more. So I met Sarah Odedina of Pushkin Press at a literary festival in Accra, the Pajah Festival. And she said, have you considered writing for young adults? And I knew who I'd write about immediately because I'd been thinking about the twins. I'd been thinking of Hassana, and she was just a delight in the 100 Doors of Salaga. She was fearless, and no one was stopping her. Nobody was stopping her, and she was going to find her twin sister. So that was a story I knew would continue. So once I got the spark from Sarah, I wrote it so fast. I wrote it so fast because they were begging for their story to be told as well.
That's great. To be honest with you, I don't know if I would, strictly speaking, frame this novel under young adult. I don't know.
That's what I've heard. I
Really?
think, a lot of people say, yeah, we just read it and it's like any other literature. But I think with the genre, it's just young protagonists and then a message of hope at the end. But think about it, when you were a teenager, or at least when I was a teenager, I read everything. I wasn't going for books that were targeted just at me. I read adult literature. So I think it's a very modern, new thing to categorize music as such.
So I don't know. I don't know if I would label that under that, But interesting. Yes, it is true that the style, the technique is different, a little bit different, easier. And to read, and go over, but interesting, very interesting. We invited people on Instagram and to ask you questions. Okay, I have two. This is from Catherine Kangas. She is a Ghanaian Finnish chef. Okay, based in Oulu. This is a northern city in Finland. Her question is: was the 100 Well of Salaga written with true happenings?
Yes, it was. So once I heard about my ancestor and I calculated when she could have lived, I found out that there was this fascinating period in Ghanaian history, the Salaga War. And it was not just about Ghana, it was also about the colonial powers of Germany and France and England trying to carve up the space. So I had these big events, big real events that I could use to sort of time post or time stamp the book. And then even some of the characters were loosely based on people I read about, like some of the Salaga chiefs and how they would connive with one colonial power and then go behind to another colonial power just to try and hold on. So definitely based on real events. But then my main characters were all imagined. And then, of course, Amina is loosely based on my ancestors. But I didn't know much about her. So in this book, she's completely imagined. I just knew she was considered beautiful. I knew her skin color was reddish, a light reddish color, and that she was of the Fulani ethnic group that runs across West Africa. So this is all I had. And then the rest of her story, I imagined,
Yeah, well, I have so many questions regarding that book, but unfortunately, I'm gonna leave them,
for another day.
Next, yeah. There's so many questions. Yeah, very interesting. Very interesting. The second question is from Italy. Okay, Marcella. She's currently reading the Italian one, Il Grande Azzurro, and so the Italian edition of The Deep Blue Between. She would like to know, what are you reading at the moment, and what made you want to read it?
Good question. So I'm rereading Gael Faye, Small Country.
Oh,
He's a Rwandan writer based in France. So I'm reading it because of my book club. I have a book club here in Senegal with young people, and so we're reading literature from all over. So far, we focused on African literature because I'm trying to get them excited about books where they can see themselves and smell things and say, that's familiar, that's the way it is, or no, I would have done it differently. So we've read Mariama Ba, we've read
So Long Letter.
Silonglet in French. We read in French. We read Veronique Tajo. Now we're reading Gael Faye. So I'm rereading that. And then I'm also reading Max Lobe's A Long Way from Douala.
Okay.
So yeah,
Interesting.
those are the
Wow.
2 books I'm reading now.
Okay. I don't know how you handle all of this. Yeah, because you also have this.
Just before bed, even if it's one chapter, I fall asleep while reading. That's I try. So it's taken a little longer than usual to finish books now. But
I loved that book. Yeah, I read it when I went to Argentina 2 years ago. Yeah, that was my book in Argentina. Yeah, very nice. So, and what is your favorite African book and why? Difficult question, I know. Sorry.
Difficult question. It changes. I think last year it was Sarah Ladipo Manika's like Camille bringing ice cream to the sun. It's about a woman in her 70s who's her body is sort of beginning to fail her, but she's always been this great beauty and she's had such wonderful life experiences. She loves literature, she wears toe rings, but she falls and then she sort of begins to take stock of her life and her relationships. And it's a very quiet book, but and slim, is a slim volume, but you travel so much in it and it's uplifting. So I think last year I needed that kind of balm because of the kind of year everybody had.
Yep.
But I think the African book that I go to over and over again is maybe Naguib Mahfouz's Palace Walk. I just love how he creates place and these fascinating characters. Like it's you can feel like you're in the house of, I've even forgotten the characters' names right now because I'm so tired. But the patriarch with his wife and all his children, I can see like being on the rooftop. Fatima is one of the characters, I think. So that's the one that I go back to over and over again. But yeah, from month to month it could change, and depending on what I'm looking for, yeah.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna ask you the last question. Okay.
Okay.
And this is related to Echo. Okay, Echo. This one right here. Okay. Actually, I met you. I learned, uh, a lot about you through this book. Then I published and translated that over here in this anthology. So when I first read your short story, Echo, and that was 8 years ago, more or less, and that's when I started reading different female writers from Africa, I found really interesting two remarkable things that you address in this short story: religion and how tolerant people are in Ghana, and also the idea of some African people, have with regard to those African who study abroad or live in Western countries, okay? Like they're living the American dream. So can you tell us a little bit about these two subjects?
So, yeah, Ghana is a country that's noted for its religious tolerance, and I am a product of two different religions. My father is Muslim and my mother is Christian, so that kind of thing happens quite often in Ghana. That said, there has been some tension lately in Ghana. The last two months, there's been cases of like schools not allowing students to fast during Ramadan. So that's brought up some things that have been simmering. And I think there was a national cathedral that was supposed to be, that is in the works. And that's also caused some controversy because there's supposed to be separation of church and state in Ghana. And lately, the two have sort of begun to blend, and a lot of people aren't too happy about that. So that's recent, because when I wrote Echo, the situation was very different then. But that said, like even in Senegal, like just the other day, you had a celebration of the end of Ramadan and Ascension on the same day all over the world, obviously. But over here and in Ghana, I find there's a way that people have managed to meld the two. But maybe when I step back and look at it, it's because these are religions that we've sort of put on ourselves. So deep down inside, we have other things that connect us outside of these religions. So you do find some people who are fanatic and hold on with all that they have. But for the most part, I think people are able to put those big differences aside and hold each other's hands, if that makes sense. And as to the idea of bintus, that's what they're called. Akosia Buzia has a book. I think it was the title Bintu in the title. I can't remember. But Bintu is a person who's been abroad and come back. Um, so yeah, there is the idea of everything outside of the African continent being El Dorado. That's where life is good. So a lot of people want to get there. But then when you do get there, you realize that you have to hustle hard.
Yeah.
So in Echo, our main character, she goes to the States as a student, but she's hustling. Life is not that easy for her either, you know. She's now you're making me unearth that story. I haven't thought about it in so long.
Well, you know,
But,
you had the taxi driver, you know, you had the
yeah,
taxi
who picks
driver
her
and
up,
yeah, it's
he takes her
Islamic one.
to his mother Hajia, and Hajia is like, "Is that your girlfriend?" So there's
Yeah.
also a discussion of class because our main character, even though in the US she's hustling, in Ghana she's middle class, upper middle class, so relatively well to do. And then you have the taxi driver who's struggling also and has a lot of pressure from his mother.
Yeah, and he confuses London and New York as well.
Yeah,
He
yeah,
keeps
yeah.
saying
So
you're
people
from
say
London. Yeah, and he believes.
anything that's
Yeah,
outside.
yeah,
Yeah.
and she lived in New York in a small apartment with a flatmate.
Mhm.
So the conditions were totally different than what the African driver thought. Yeah, or
Yeah,
imagined. So
yeah.
good,
And I
good, good.
think even here it's the same thing. You hear of lots of young people just disappearing and ending up on a boat for Europe because the perception is that even if it's hard, life is better there. And it's sad because now that I've started my little ice cream business here, there's so much potential for things to do. And sometimes you just need a little help to start. But
Yeah.
I feel like it's unlimitless over here. Whereas while you're in Europe, you have to be constrained physically into these tight spaces you're sharing with tons of people. And I I say this because I was in Morocco when my sister was studying there, and some of her friends, I would see the flats, and I could picture what it was like for a lot of migrants passing through. Because these guys were students, so they had a little more money, but still, they were crammed in these quarters, sleeping on mattresses on the floor. So if you didn't have even a school supporting you, imagine how much worse it could be. Um, and then here you have your family support system, and if you do get that seed money, you can create. But it's hard. It's hard for a lot of people. I know that it's really hard. So no wonder people dream of getting out.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
mistake in there. Yeah, yeah. So thank you, Ayesha Harruna.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure. You made my day indeed.
Thank you
So
so much.
thank you. No, thank you indeed for your time. So have a great day. Okay. So and I'll see you very, very soon. Okay. So
Sounds good.
thank you.
Sounds
Thank you
good.
so much.